Hare Krishna, welcome back to my channel. I am Radhika Piyari Devi Dasi, and today I am going to share with you about the glories of Lord Narasimhadev and his dear devotee Prahlad Maharaj. Whenever it's time for the festivals, it is an opportunity for all of us to remember the Lord along with his glories, and the main thing is remembering his devotees who have devoted their life for the glorification of Lord. So Prahlad Maharaj is actually one such devotee who is eternally remembered and eternally famous for his devotion. So before beginning the story of how Prahlad Maharaj was saved by Lord Narasimhadev, this entire incident goes back into the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Maharaj Parikshit actually asks Sukadev Goswami. So his question, after hearing how Indradev was allowed by the Supreme Lord to kill the sons of Diti, he actually gets confused and doubtful. He asks Sukadev Goswami that, "Oh dear Brahmana, the Supreme Lord Vishnu is actually everyone's well-wisher and he is known to be equal to all. Then how did he become partial like a common man just so that Indra can kill the sons of Diti? When one is equal to everyone, then how he is partial to some and inimical to others?" So this is a question which Parikshit Maharaj had in his mind. He even asked Sukdev Goswami, if the Lord is self-sufficient, if the Lord is the reservoir of all pleasure, if he is complete in himself, then what would he really gain by siding with these demigods? Is Lord Narayan really impartial, or what is really his quality? So can you please explain to me and clear this doubt which is actually brewing in my mind? This is what actually Parikshit Maharaj had the doubt about. So he is right now showing that how he's getting affected by the ignorance or doubt in his mind, and he wants a Vaishnava, his guru, to actually dispel that darkness and give him some positive evidence regarding his neutrality, means the Lord's neutrality. Now, in this, Sukdeva Goswami actually responds to Parikshit Maharaj that your question is excellent. He says that because the kind of question you have asked, it's going to help not just you, but also so many people who in the near future are going to have these questions about Lord and Lord's authenticity of being impartial. And also, this will be an interesting discussion which will glorify the Lord's activities more, and it will even glorify his devotees even more. And whenever someone who is devoted to the Supreme Lord, who is trying to become a devotee or who is a devotee of the Lord, such topics of discussions actually become very pleasing for everyone, and also it counteracts the miseries of this materialistic way of living. Now Sukdeva Goswami explains to Parikshit Maharaj that, hey Parikshit, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Hari, is actually very always transcendental, and he is transcendental to all these material qualities, and that is why he is called as Nirguna. Usually, when the term Nirguna is used, people think that Nirguna means one who doesn't have any guna. So yes, the Lord doesn't have any guna means he doesn't have the material guna, which is the material sato, rajo, and tamo, because he has the transcendental guna, which is actually not connected with this materialistic three modes of nature. So, because he's called as Nirguna and he is also unborn, which is means he's never taken birth from like a regular womb. So he appears in this world through the agency of his internal potency. Even though Lord's activities may sometimes appear otherwise, like they may appear materialistic, but actually they are absolute. They are completely spiritual. And that is why it is an imposition to think that he acts under material. influence. So now the three qualities of material modes of nature is Sattvagun, Rajagun and Tamagun. These three qualities, they are on the materialistic platform and they are unable to touch the Supreme Lord. But on the other hand, this mode of goodness, it actually becomes prominent among the sages and the demigods. So what happens is that the sages and the demigods, they have the prominent uh, qualities of Satogun. That's why the demigods are called as suras. Sages are known to be very pious. So they are able to flourish with that kind of quality. And now, whenever this mode of passion is very prominent, in there the demons flourish. Why? Because the demons are very passionate, they are looking for sense gratification always, and all they think about is pleasure. Then comes the mode of ignorance, and that particular quality becomes predominant among the yakshas and the rakshasas. Now, the rakshasas, they are also cannibalistic, so they can even eat human beings. Sometimes they are doing things they don't know what is right, what is wrong, and but in that particular quality they flourish. But because the Lord in the form of Paramatma is present in everyone's heart, the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of Paramatma, he impartially he fosters all these qualities, all this in a way that the reactions of these modes of nature happens according to one's activities. Now, it's not that this material mode of nature, like this three gunas, will all act at once, but it acts in a way like how seasonal changes happens. Like sometimes there is, increase in the mode of goodness, sometimes there is increase in the mode of passion, and sometimes increase in the mode of ignorance. Now this happens as per even different yugas, where there is more prominence of sattva and rajo or tamogun. Like in Kali Yuga, it is majorly tamo and rajo gun, and then eventually after once the Gaur Kali Yuga happens, it will be more tamogun. So that is what happens in a seasonal way, like how we have different seasons and different particular weathers are active in a particular season. So what happens is that this is the way these modes work. But what happens in an intelligent person, that person can estimate how much amount of fire is present in the wood and how much amount of water and air is within a pot. So when a person is an expert thinker, like devotedly intelligent, he can understand how much one has been favored by the Supreme Lord when a person's godly and demonic activities are observed. So if a person has more godly activities going on, not externally, but even through their behavior and everything, then we can know that how much that person is favored. Now, when such kind of favor happens, it's not because of the Lord's partiality, but why it happens is because it is dependent on the attitude of the individual on the basis of his activities, what he performs, and also the attitude of receiving this mercy. Now, according to also the past activities or fruitive activities which a person or living entity performs in their past life, that because of that the Lord awards him a certain kind of body and then infuses it accordingly with the proportionate mode of nature. So some people who are like among us, we may see a certain quality of rajagun more in them or tamagun more in them, or two qualities more prominent or one quality satagun more prominent in them. So the Supreme Lord is actually the creator of this cosmic manifestation and also the Kala, the time factor. So that's why he provides the laws under which these conditioned souls may act. What happens is that this time factor, it is actually enhancing the sattva guna. So now because the Kala or the time factor, it actually enhances the sattva guna, and that is why majorly the demigods, they come out victorious. Like even though they are troubled or whatever, but then um, they come out victorious. And although the Lord is the original cause of the situation, he cannot be said to be partial because he's just granting. He's just granting as per the activities and the attitude of the recipient, means the living entities. Then Sukdev Goswami narrates to Parikshit Maharaj the following incident where Maharaj Yudhishthira, when he was performing this Rajasuya sacrifice, he had seen when Lord Krishna beheaded Shishupal, how his like Shishupal in, as soul, he entered into the body of Lord Krishna. So he was very astonished because he knew that Shishupal is was one of those people who was very envious of the Lord, and he was shocked at how even after being envious, just by getting beheaded by the Lord, he got that moksha. Because even great transcendentalists are attempting to get this kind of moksha and they fail. So he was kind of shocked at how he got this Sayujya Mukti, and also was thinking that how does an individual who is kind of envious of the Lord or being enemy of the Lord can achieve this kind of liberation. Now, the doubt also comes to Yudhishthira Maharaj's mind about King Veena. Now, King Veena was one such king who used to always blaspheme the Supreme Lord. And because of his blasphemy toward the Supreme Lord, he was obliged to go to hell. And then there was Dantavarka, who was actually the son of Damughosha. Now, this Dantavarka, even before learning to speak, he used to, through his acts, actually blaspheme the Supreme Personality of God, Shri Krishna. So, even after repeatedly he was blaspheming Lord, how did these two brothers remain quite healthy? That's what Yudhishthira Maharaj did not understand. Like when you blaspheme the Supreme Lord, there has to be some reaction. So how come they did not get, their tongue did not get leprosy, or they did not enter into the darkest regions of hell? How was it really possible for Shishupal and Dantavarka to receive so much mercy from the Lord, despite they were being enemies? So Yudhishthir Maharaj asked to Narad Muni during the time of Rajasuya Yagya, who was seated nearby, that my mind is disturbed about this. I don't understand how this happens. Hearing this query and doubt of Yudhishthir Maharaj, Narad Muni ji feels very compassionate towards him, and he starts answering Yudhishthir Maharaj's question. And he tells him that because we are in this bodily conception of life, usually as conditioned souls, they become subject to the dualities, like of someone getting praised. There is that duality of thinking that, oh, I'm getting praised, praise and chastisement. These two dualities, everyone who is living in this material world is conditioned to get affected by this duality. Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Hari, does not have a material body, he doesn't have the false conception of I and mine. That is the difference. And for this reason, he does not feel any pleasure or pain when someone offers prayers and or someone is blasphemed. He also doesn't have any enemies or friends. So this was the response by Narad Muniji. And then Narad Muniji continues that when the Lord accepts the prayers from his devotees and also when he accepts the chastisements from the demons, they are both absolutely good for him. So, by enmity or by fear or by affection or lusty desires, as well as devotional service, somehow or the other, if a person concentrates their mind upon the Supreme Lord, then the results will be same. In the sense, they will actually get the benefit. Now, the thing is, there is little difference. The results can be same in the sense Narad Muniji is explaining that the liberation part will be there, but the mood will be different Bhakti, getting bhakti is something different, but what it is explaining is how the yogis are doing this so much sadhana and still not getting to where all these demons are going to. So that is what the purpose of that is met even when a person is chastising. So Narad Muni also makes a point that it is in his opinion that sometimes through devotional service one is not able to generally achieve that much intense absorption in the thought of the Supreme Lord as what someone who has enmity towards him. Just see Kamsa, how he was so much absorbed in his enmity towards Lord that he would constantly think about him in the form of fear. So that is why the thought is so much on the Supreme Lord, and this is one of the reasons why the reasons of the liberation for these demons or the enemies. So, like he also gives one example in the Bhagavatam. It is mentioned by Sri Narad Muni that there is some kind of worm which is like confined in a hole in the wall by a bee. Because the worm is constantly thinking of the bee out of fear, the worm later receives the body of a bee. So, similarly, if one thinks of Krishna in any of the above mentioned means, he becomes purified of all sins. And ultimately, he gets a spiritual body. Now, many persons in the past have attained liberation simply by thinking of the Supreme Lord. And they have given their attention in this manner. Now, Radharani talks about the gopis where they have perfected their life by having the lusty desires. Kamsa by fear, Shishupal by his envy, the Yadus and by their family affection, like relationship with Krishna, and the Pandavas by having this great affection of friendship for Krishna. Generally, what happens that the general devotees they get this liberation because of the devotional service. But if somehow or the other, if one considers the form of Krishna very seriously, he can return home back to Godhead. So now there is atheists like King Veena. He was unable to think of Krishna's form, and that is why he did not achieve salvation. But in terms of these other demons like Dantavarka and Shishupal, they used to constantly, even Kamsa used to constantly think about Krishna, and that is why they were able to attain salvation. Then Narad Muniji continues also. Then Narad Muniji continues that Shishupal and Dantavarka, who are actually the cousins of Pandavas, they were even the sons of their maternal aunt. So they were actually in the past the associates of Lord Vishnu, and their name were Jay Vijay, and they were cursed by the Brahmana, like the four Kumaras. That's why they fell from the Vaikuntha to the material world. And these were originally the gatekeepers of the Lord, Jaya Vijay. And they were born in Satyug as the sons of Diti, and then late as known as Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha. And then this Hiranyakashipu was the one who actually harassed and tortured his devotee son Prahlad Maharaj. Now, these same people, the same two entities became in the Treta Yuga as Ravana and Kumbhakarna, and then later on they became in the Dwapar Yuga as Shishupal and Dantavarka. And because in all these lifetimes, these two living entities, Jaya and Vijay, in these different demonic forms, because they constantly thought of the Lord in the feelings of enmity, they were able to regain that shelter of the Lord by returning back home, back to Godhead. So then Maharaj Yudhishthir asked that usually parents are always affectionate towards their children, and even if a son is disobedient, the father will chastise the son and then for the sake of the welfare of the son, not out of enmity. So, how was it really possible for this person Hiranyakashipu to try and kill his such an exalted son who was a devotee of the Lord? He was so obedient, he was so well behaved, he was so respectful. So, how was he really doing this thing to his own son? So, please explain to me that how the small boy like Prahlad Maharaj he became such an exalted devotee of the Lord also. So now Narad Muniji narrates the history of Prahlad Maharaj to Yudhishthir Maharaj during the Rajasuya time. So he explains, he starts with a story where he's starting with how Hiranyaksha, his brother of Hiranyakashipu, was killed by Varahadev. And Hiranyakashipu, because of this, he filled with so much lamentation and so much revenge attitude that he was angrily biting his lips, and he was looking up in the sky with, like, fiery eyes. He was just so angry. So then what happened was, in his this angry form, Hiranyakashipu actually holds his trident and he started talking to his demon associates, and he tells them that, "Hear to me, my demon friends, and now act accordingly without any delay." He tells them that how our very insignificant enemies, which are the demigods, which the demons consider the demigods very insignificant, they took the help of Lord Vishnu and they killed my brother. Now, because of this Supreme Lord, who is said to be, or this Lord Vishnu, who is said to be equal to both sides or very much impartial, he has actually showed his inclination towards the demigods, and he has taken their side. So, because he has come under the influence of Maya and not shown his natural equality nature, and he came in the form of boar and he killed my brother. So, what we are going to do is that we are going to sever the head of Lord Vishnu with my trident, and then we will please my dear brother Hiranyaksha, because this will be an offering to my brother. So whatever obligations I have, I am going to fulfill that. At the same time, I'll achieve my peace of mind by killing Lord Vishnu. Then he continues that once I kill Lord Vishnu, you all should go to earth, and right now the earthly planet is flourishing because of Brahmanical culture. There is Kshatriya government. So destroy all these people who are engaged in austerity and sacrifice, and also they are engaged into Vedic study, and they are performing vows, they are doing austerity, giving charity. So this basic principle of Brahmanical culture, which is actually maintaining the piety on this earthly planet and satisfying the demigods and Lord Vishnu, that should be wiped out. So if the Brahmanas are killed, then there will be no one to encourage the Kshatriyas to perform yagyas or to fight for the good. And then what will happen? Because of this, the demigods will automatically perish. So he instructs the demons associates to go wherever the Brahmanas are, and cows wherever they are, where they are protected, and set fire to those places. So basically, in today's world, that is the same thing which is happening, that the cows and the Brahmanical culture is the big thing which is getting attacked. The cows are being killed, either smuggling happens or openly killing of the cows happen. So they're like, the cow meat is become so famous, like they call it beef. So this is one of the examples showing through Hiranyakashipu that how one can destroy the power of the demigods on the earthly plane, the regular working of the nature, by actually destroying the cows and the Brahmanical culture. So now what did the demons do? They took Hiranyakashipu's orders to their heart, and then they took that duty on their heads, and then they went to the earthly plane, went there, and they started setting fire to the cities, pasturing grounds, then cow sheds, gardens, agricultural fields, everything they started destroying. They even burned down the ashramas of saintly people where there would be like Gurukul system. So there were like Vaishya class, like the villages, there would be cowherd men, and there would be capital of where the Kshatriyas would rule. So they would actually, the demons would destroy the bridges there, city walls, gates, everything. They would cut down the nice trees and the vegetations which was there, valuable fruit trees which were there. They were just setting fire to everything. So because of these disturbances which happened, people in general, they were giving up the Vedic culture. And then the demigods also became disturbed, because they were not getting the sacrificial offerings. And because of this, the demigods, when the sacrificial offerings are being offered to them, that kind of helps them to stay onto the heavenly plane, because the pious credits keep on increasing, right? Because of that. But as soon as those activities are stopped by the human beings, then the demigods also, they become they get kicked out from the heavenly abodes. And also because the demons were kept causing havoc, they were also causing this to the demigods. So now the demigods they begin wandering over the earth. And so the demigods, after, when they actually were wandering, they went and looked for the disaster which was actually happening on the earthly plane, why they were not able to get any sacrificial offering. Now what happens is that Hiranyakashipu, he actually goes and performs the funeral ceremonies of his brother, and then he starts consoling his side of the family, his sister-in-law. He gives them different reasons. He actually uses a lot of philosophical content too, where he is talking about one not being a body, giving some reference of some other story, explaining to them that how the spirit soul has no death. And like he's actually using philosophy, that how he's eternal. So you see that that aspect of that pure devotee, eternal devotee, is in him, because he was originally the gatekeeper of the supreme lord. So he starts saying about all these things in order to enlighten his family, and especially the wife of Hiranyaksha. When Hiranyakashipu actually described about this story and also explained how one should not lament or try not to lament, then it gave this Hiraditi and Rushabhanu, who was the wife of Hiranyaksha, to give up their grief. And then they started engaging their minds in understanding the real philosophy of life. So now Hiranyakashipu, he went to a valley of Mount Mandara, and he desired actually there to become immortal. And he also wanted to become like master of all the mystic siddhis, we call them siddhi powers which are there. And he wanted to be the alone person who would rule the universe. So he started performing austerities. Now because of performing austerities, he would actually stand motionless on his tiptoes and extend his arm upwards. His eyes was directed towards the sky. It was very, very difficult actually to maintain such a position. So Hiranyakashipu did this as a means of attaining perfection. Now what happened was, these demigods who are wandering over the earth, they actually saw that Hiranyakashipu, he had gone to perform austerities. Now here they became relieved, because now they can perform, they can actually not get worried, and they can go back to the heavenly abodes. But after some time, the light from the body of Hiranyakashipu started emitting. It was like more stronger than the sun's light actually, and it felt like as if it was a time of dissolution. So that started emanating from the body of Hiranyakashipu. Why? Because he was doing austerities, so he got that power. Now, now we also see this image where Hiranyakashipu is doing like completely, looks very thin, and he's doing these austerities, and fire and smoke is coming out from his body from all the directions. So that's what started happening with Hiranyakashipu, that he was emanating this so much fire and smoke from his body, and the entire universe kind of became extremely hot. The ocean waters also became agitated, and because of this, what happened? Hiranyakashipu austerities became like very strong. Now, because the demigods were so scared, they approached Lord Brahma. They informed him of the situation, and they explained to him that the fire is emanating from the body of Hiranyakashipu, and that has disturbed the whole universe, and it has become so hot that we cannot even reside in our own planets. So, Lord Brahma, please stop Hiranyakashipu from doing these austerities. Brahmaji, he goes to stop that austerity. At the same time, in order to stop that austerity, he had to give him some boon. So he goes there in front of Hiranyakashipu. Now Hiranyakashipu, when so Hiranyakashipu is actually deep in his austerity and meditation, what he is doing. So Lord Brahma, because he's on the highest platform, like he's on the Brahmalok, the topmost planet, he is very exalted personality actually. So he has this from his Kamandala, he has this spiritual water, and then he sprinkles that on the body of Hiranyakashipu. Now, full body of Hiranyakashipu gets rejuvenated, and his complexion just resembles like molten gold, and his limbs become very strong, like very strong. So whatever he was, he's like looks much better than that. So now what happens is that Hiranyakashipu stands up and he is very much happy, excited that he actually thinks that the worshipable Lord whom he was actually thinking about, who is praying for the boon, is right now present in front of him. Now Lord Brahma, he says that how he is satisfied with him and whatever blessings he want from him, he can actually ask. So he asks to Lord Brahma, Hiranyakashipu asks to Lord Brahma that my desire is to become immortal. So now what happened is that Hiranyakashipu is thinking here that Lord Brahma is the topmost, like God. He's the supreme personality of God. That's what he's thinking, and he's expecting to receive his cherished benediction from him. But when Brahmaji, after hearing from him that what boon is asking, he just explains that he himself cannot give immortality boon or benediction because he himself is not immortal, because he doesn't have that capacity to award immortality, because eventually over the kalpas he will also have to leave this body. So then what Hiranyakashipu does is that he actually asks and he requests benedictions as follows. So now Hiranyakashipu says that he doesn't want to meet death at the hands of any living entities who are created by him. Let him not die within any residence or outside of any residence, during daytime, during nighttime, on the ground, in the sky. Doesn't want to be killed by any living being created by someone other than you, and let not me be killed by any weapon. And then he also asks for sole lordship over the all the living entities, including the presiding deities or the administrators of this material world. So he wants all the mystic powers, he asks for all the mystic powers which is achieved by the practice of yoga and austerities. So now, because Lord Brahmaji is very satisfied with the austerities and penances of Hiranyakashipu, Lord Brahma says that okay, being the son of Diti and performing all these austerities and everything, whatever benediction we have requested, it is actually very difficult to obtain for anyone. But then still, because I am pleased with you, I am going to grant that to you. Now Brahmaji departs after uh, giving the benediction. Hiranyakashipu, he actually never forgot his enmity. Even after doing the austerity, this penances, there was no use, because this boon or whatever he wanted to get was actually to kill Vishnu. So now what happens? All this austerities and penances he did was actually of no use, because in the end his aim was only to kill Vishnu. Now Hiranyakashipu, after getting this benediction, he conquers over the entire three worlds. He defeats all the rulers of the different planets, even Yamraj, everyone he defeats. Then he brings like the upper, middle, lower planetary systems under his control. So all these planetary systems he brings under his control, and he is actually residing within Indra's palace. The steps of Indra's residence actually were made up of like coral. It's explained in the Bhagavatam, and the floor was like completely decorated with emeralds, and the walls, the entire walls were made of crystals. So there was like Veduria stones on the walls, and seats where the people like the demigods would sit on there. It was made up of rubies. Now the position of Indradev which was there, that Hiranyakashipu had taken, he was getting intoxicated. He's always smelling like drinking the wine or the liquor from the celestial world, and he had this copper colored like with angry looking eyes. It was always rolling because of being intoxicated. But still, because of the power of his austerities, everyone in the universe, except like Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Lord Vishnu, they had they had to personally worship him and please him with presentations which were offered with their own hands. So they had to do all these things. Now, Bhrigu Muni, he could not burn Hiranyakashipu to ashes with his anger because Hiranyakashipu's power excelled even his. So while he was sitting on Indra's throne, Hiranyakashipu was controlling the inhabitants of all the other planets. Gandharvas are there, Vidyadharas are there, Apsaras are there, Naradas are there. So he was actually controlling all of them. And he was actually making them glorify him. So whatever offerings which were made in the sacrifice, usually it goes to the demigods and goes to Vishnu. But because Hiranyakashipu was ruling it, he was actually accepting all this offerings and not sharing anything with the demigods. Now, why? What happened was because of this, the demigods, like they were like so much fearful of Hiranyakashipu. So even the earthly plane or the earth, Mother Earth, she delivered grains to Hiranyakashipu even without being plowed. Usually, what happens is that you have to plow the land, but she was delivering it without any grains. Cows were delivering milk, abundant milk. It was all because of fear which was happening. Now, he was not taking help from any of the demigods like Indra, Vayu, Agni. He was just single handedly directing all the universal departments. And when to, like, he was just mismanaging everything. There are certain timelines, there are certain systems when the rain has to happen, sun has to come out and all that. So, what happens is that he was actually just doing it anytime, drying, burning, or stuff, pouring rainfall because he had achieved the power of controlling all the directions and he was through that enjoying sense gratification. So because of all these this boon which he got, he became very very proud of his opulence, and he passed a very long time in transgressing the principles of the religion, transgressing the principles of how this material world works. Now, because of all these tribulations with the uh, demigods actually were going through, they uh, started doing austerities. They started living on air because there was no sacrifices offered. They tried controlling. They controlled their mind. They were actually worshipping the Lord during this time, and they were making the prayers that, "Oh Supreme Lord, please help us." Please help us because right now we have no other shelter. We have been implicated so much by this demon. So, because of this prayers, the Supreme Lord appears and he actually encourages the demigods, gives them assurance that don't worry, there will be end of this demon. And the Lord said that I'm going to come. So do not worry. He will be vanquished. And and the Lord said to him that once he starts this Hiranyakashipu, he starts tormenting his son, who is going to be a very great devotee of mine, then I'm going to immediately kill him. So that is going to happen. So now the demigods, after hearing these words of assurance, they became very, very happy. They returned back wherever they were dwelling at this point, and they knew that Hiranyakashipu will be good as dead very soon. Now, Hiranyakashipu had actually four wonderful sons, very, very qualified sons, and among them, the best one was Prahlad. And he was actually the unalloyed devotee of the Supreme Personality of God. Very, very exemplary character he had. He was like, even though he was born as like the son of a demon, he was still having the quality of a like a perfectly qualified Brahmana. He had fully controlled his mind and senses, and he was very kind and best friend of everyone. So whenever there would be respectful persons, he acted just like the menial servant to them, and to the poor people, he was just like a father. To his equals, he was like a sympathetic brother, and he considered his teachers, spiritual masters, and other god brothers and god brothers to be good as the supreme personality of God. So Prahlad Maharaj was completely devoid of any kind of unnatural pride which a living entity is subjected to, and he also had arisen from his like good education, like wealth, beauty. He was like kind of above that. He did not even care about those things. The most important thing was that Prahlad Maharaj was a very great devotee of Lord Vishnu. He's never envious of any Vaishnavas, never agitated or put into danger, and he was not at all interested in fruitive activities described in the Vedas. So these are all these wonderful qualities of Prahlad Maharaj which he had. Now, in the very beginning of his childhood, Prahlad Maharaj, he was very much uninterested in childish plays. He would remain silent when he still being. He was fully absorbed into God consciousness, Krishna consciousness. He was so much engrossed in the thought of Lord Sri Hari that it was like a strong planetary influence on his mind, that he was not interested into anything else. He always felt this embrace of Lord, and he just did not even know how his bodily necessities, or eating, walking, lying down, sitting, drinking, how they were automatically performed. But this is how, being such a small baby, he was actually so much exalted. That actually shows that how much Prahlad Maharaj was scared by Govinda. Sometimes his absorption with the Lord was so strong that he would think so deeply about the Lord and his pastimes that he would feel that qualitative oneness with the Lord, and he would sometimes feel that he is touching the lotus feet of the Lord. He would become very thrilled with ecstasy, and after the very next moment, he would become silent and his hair would be standing on end. So, this is the kind of meditation Prahlad Maharaj, such deep meditation he was into while worshipping the Supreme Lord through his mind, through his actions, through his words. Now, Shukracharya was actually the ritualistic priest, the what do you call the teacher of the demons, and he had two sons actually. Their name was Sanda and Amarka, and they resided near Hiranyakashipu's palace. And they were actually the teachers of Prahlad Maharaj. Even though Prahlad Maharaj was already fully educated in terms of devotional life, but Hiranyakashipu actually wanted Prahlad Maharaj to learn, the study of this demon culture. So he sent him to Shukracharya's son so that whatever material subjects needed to be learned, they can actually teach him. So now one day what happens is that Hiranyakashipu, he takes his son Prahlad onto his lap and he sees him. And he, out of great affection, he asks him a question. He expects him to reply something very childish, because the nature, like what would you expect from a small child? What would they answer really? Something very childish and childish language. So he just asks him very nicely, smells his head, and then he says that, please tell me, what you have found the best of all things that you have studied in school. Now Prahlad Maharaj, he addresses his father that, oh, the best of the asuras, this is what I have learned. So he explains that I have accepted a temporary body and for enjoying this household life for sense gratification, and I'm certainly very impressed, and I'm certainly very embarrassed by anxieties due to having fallen into this dark well where like there is no water, there is only misery. He explains to his father that this kind of ignorance which I am living in, and we all are living in, which should be given up, and one should take the shelter of the supreme personality of Godhead, Hari. Now, when Hiranyakashipu hears these words, which actually describes Prahlada's faithfulness towards his like hardcore, his very intimate like enemy, like to whom actually he considers a very very great enemy, Hiranyakashipu starts laughing, but in a very angry manner. So then he tries to be sarcastic, saying that, oh, what an intelligence as a small child you have. You have been spoiled by the words of my adversaries. So, like, he says that how. So, Hiranyakashipu is laughing, but he's laughing at the same time with a lot of arrogance and sarcasm, that he's saying to his son that, how come, being such a small, innocent child, how come you have learned something so favorable towards for my enemy? And who has taught you this thing? So then he tells his assistant that you have to protect my son, like the teachers who are Shukracharya's sons, and let him not further get influenced by any kind of this talks which actually the Vaishnavas make about. So protect my child so that no Vaishnavas are coming into the Gurukula. So now Prahlad Maharaj is again brought back to Gurukul, and then Sanda Amarka, um, they learned that what Hiranyakashipu's servants said, or the assistant said to Sanda Amarka, and then they took they took Prahlad Maharaj's side, and then they inquired from Prahlad Maharaj in a very mild, like affectionate voices, that please tell us the truth. Like, do not speak any lie. Who taught you this? Who has polluted your intelligence? Like, how do you know things about Vaishnava philosophy? So now on this, what happens is that Prahlad Maharaj responds to Sanda Namarka in a very, very educative and very devotional manner, saying that, this external energy of the Lord is so strong that it creates distinction as someone being friend, someone being enemy, dilutes the intelligence of men also. So I had heard this, whatever I have heard about the Supreme from authority, from exalted Vaishnava, and I've heard this from authoritative sources. So it is not that someone has influenced me, but I have just naturally heard it. So then he says that as how iron automatically gets attracted towards a magnet, so is my mind automatically attracted to Lord Vishnu. So now Prahlad Maharaj goes on explaining to Sanda and Amarka, and they are like completely shocked at what this boy has learned. Sanda and Amarka just brush him off and then start still teaching him and like try to decode him about everything, and then they start teaching him about everything related to dharma, artha, kama, and then they felt actually that Prahlad might have now completely understood whatever we wanted to teach him. So they actually dress him nicely, and then they take him in, they prepare him, and the mother dresses Prahlad Maharaj, takes him in front of his father. Now the father is thinking, okay, fine, my son is completely educated and he doesn't have all this spiritual or devotional mind anymore. So now he again embraces him, and then he puts him on his lap, smells his head, and then he asks him again that now you have been taught by your teachers nicely for a very, very long time. So now you tell me what is the best of all you have learned. Then Prahlad Maharaj again says the same thing in a more elaborative manner, saying that hearing the names of Hari, chanting the names of Hari, his transcendental names, glories, everything, worshipping him, like he talks about the nine process of devotional service. So anyone who like it's considered to me, considered to by me as a topmost education. So he says like that. Now hearing this, Hiranyakashipu becomes so much angry that his lips start trembling, and he chastises Sanda, and he's like, "What did you teach my son? Like he's so unqualified. Like how did you make my son so abominable?" That he's disregarding my order, he's siding with my enemy. What kind of nonsense is he learning, and what are you guys teaching to my son? So the sons of Shukracharya, they respond that we have not taught him anything in respect to the Vaishnava teachings. Is actually whatever your son is actually is telling is someone else who is teaching, and he's saying that his devotion is seems to us that his devotion seems very spontaneous towards Lord Vishnu. So then in this way, when Hiranyakashipu hears, he turns to Prahlad Maharaj and he calls him, "You rascal! You're so fallen! You are like an enemy in the guise of my son. You are actually against me. You went against your teachers, not receiving the proper education." So then, because of this anger, Hiranyakashipu starts torturing Prahlad Maharaj in all different ways. Now he puts him into this under the pot of like this snake biting, throws him down the cliff or big huge height, or also like with the help of his sister, he tries to burn him. All sorts of things he tries to do. Every time he has tried to torture Prahlad Maharaj, always Lord Sri Krishna, Lord Sri Hari, Vishnu has helped him. He actually protected him. So because all these things happened and Hiranyakashipu was unable to crush Prahlad Maharaj, he became extremely, extremely angry. And he also, there was a feeling of anxiety which he started developing, that he's not able to kill him. So he starts actually one day chastising Prahlad Maharaj with a lot of bad words and harsh words. And then he actually says that he is actually higher than Vishnu, he is actually Lord Vishnu. So even Hiranyakashipu during this time comes to know that how his son is also preaching the other demon children in the Gurukul, and that actually angers him more, because the sons of the demons also ask Prahlad Maharaj how he has become so enlightened and also become a devotee, and how did he get all this knowledge. So when Prahlad Maharaj explains that when his father went to this Mandachala mountain for doing the severe austerities, that time the demigods came to know that my mother is pregnant and they want to subdue all the demons. So then Prahlad Maharaj says that how his mother was arrested, and the actual plan was actually to kill that baby who was inside, which was me. But then um, the time when they were thinking about it, Narad Muni actually comes in and steps in, and he protects the child. And at that time, he says that, starts giving the transcendental knowledge, and I started absorbing everything. And that is one of the reason why he is my guru, Narad Muni ji is, and I got this transcendental knowledge and got blessed by the mercy of the Lord. Now all these things also Hiranyakashipu comes to know, so he becomes so mad. Now after doing all these tribulations or torture on Prahlad Maharaj, finally, Hiranyakashipu is like, "What are you saying? That your Lord is everywhere? Where is your Lord? Show me your Lord." And he starts like saying these things. So Prahlad Maharaj actually tells to Hiranyakashipu that my Lord is everywhere. He's present everywhere. He's protecting me from everywhere. That's when Hiranyakashipu starts questioning him. Where is your Lord? Is he here? Is he here? Is he here? And Prahlad Maharaj says, yes, he is here. And it's like, is he in this pillar? And then Prahlad Maharaj says, yes, he is in this pillar. So then he goes, okay, fine, he is in this pillar, then I'll just break it and see that if he is in the pillar or not. So that time, because his and torture has become so high, and then he's so anxious, and then he hits that pillar with his club, and that time comes the form of Lord Narasimhadev. So Lord Narasimhadev, when he appears, that form is so ferocious that Hiranyakashipu is shocked. He is actually thinking, what is this form? He's never seen this kind of form. What, like, who has made this form? Because never in the creation of Lord Brahma, this kind of form is ever seen. The reason why the reason why Narasimhadev appeared from the pillar, so that he could prove Prahlad's statement that how he is present everywhere. So, in order to fulfill and to make his devotees' word true, the Lord appears there. Now, this form of Lord Narasimhadev was very extremely fearful. His angry eyes, like big eyes, very angry, shining, very shining eyes, and his face, like he was so huge. His deadly teeth, everything, like razor sharp tongue, had so many like hands. His ears were like erect, nostrils were nostrils, and gapping mouth, they appeared like mountain caves. He was very huge form. Neck was short, and then his chest was very broad. Waist was thin. Even in this form, ferocious form, he still looked very attractive. Very attractive, Lord Narasimhadev. So then Hiranyakashipu, after being so amazed and shocked at what kind of form is there, he starts fighting with Lord Narasimhadev. Now they are going through this repeated fight, and the demigods are fearful, looking at the corner what is happening, and this fight is going on. And in this fight, definitely, of course, Lord Narasimhadev actually wins. So in the end, um, all this anger which Lord Narasimhadev has is the torture which this demon Hiranyakashipu put on his dear devotee Prahlad Maharaj. So he actually just takes him like a small mouse, and he catches hold of him, puts him on his, he kind of swings him in his arm round and round, and then he puts him lengthwise, like kind of horizontal form, on his lap. And then Narasimhadev sits not in the entrance inside the room or outside the room. This is actually not daytime, afternoon, or anything. It's actually the, we call it the time where it's like a twilight time. That's why it's not even sunset completely. It's like a very middle time. So then he sits during that time. He uses his nails and then he presses on the stomach of Hiranyakashipu and tears open without any weapons his stomach, removes all the intestine and kills on the spot Hiranyakashipu and decorates his neck with the garland of his intestines. So that's how Hiranyakashipu's end happens. Lord's face is actually sprinkled with drops of blood. He has fierce eyes. He's filled with anger, and it's very, very impossible to look. Now, the Lord is still very angry because that mood is there where he's in his angry mood, where his devotee has been bothered. Now, the Lord is still sitting there and roaring, and he's very, very angry. All the demigods, even though Hiranyakashipu is dead, now they are more fearful of the Lord because the Lord is in such a ferocious form. Demigods are not able to approach him. Lord Brahma is also scared. They are asking Lakshmi Devi to go, but Lakshmi Devi is also not wanting to go because of this fearful form of Lord. Because every time like the demigods are going closer, he's like ha, like making that sound. He's like very fearful. He's very angry. So then Brahmaji actually asks and requests Prahlad Maharaj that he incarnated in this form for you. His entire anger is because you were being tortured. So Prahlad Maharaj is requested by Lord Brahma that please go and pacify the Lord because you are such a dear devotee of him. So Prahlad Maharaj, even though he did not, he was just a small boy, he just accepted naturally Lord Brahma's request, and then he approaches Lord Narasimhadev with his folded hands, and then as soon as Lord Narasimhadev sees this small boy Prahlad walking towards him, his anger just starts like this transcendental anger. It's not like a material anger which you and I get. It is a transcendental anger displaying the care and the affection what he has for his devotee Prahlad. So he actually shows Prahlad Maharaj is reciprocating with the Lord. He's showing that he has no fear and he is very happy seeing the Lord in that form. So then Lashingadev's anger cools down. He picks up Prahlad Maharaj and puts him on his lap. Touches Prahlad with his transcendental hand, like his lotus palms on his head, moves his hand over his head and like caresses him. Uh, Already Prahlad Maharaj was like so such a great devotee, but when he even gets touched, he gets more freed from any kind of material desires or contamination. So because of this cleansing, this how he transcendently get cleansed, he becomes transcendently situated such that all the symptoms of ecstasy starts getting onto the body, like manifesting into the body of Prahlad Maharaj. His heart just becomes so much filled with love, and his eyes with tears, and he's like completely captured with the lotus feet of the Lord. And then he starts making prayers for Lord Narasimhadev. He's completely in trance. Narasimhadev actually asks him that what is the boon you want? Please tell me. Even though I know you don't want anything, but ask me the boon you want. So Prahlad Maharaj says that I'm not afraid of your ferocious mouth, of your tongue, or anything. But you, so then Prahlad Maharaj actually says to Narasimhadev that there are saintly people, my lord, who are interested in their individual uh, liberation, but I am actually not interested in any kind of personal salvation. That you know he Prahlad Maharaj says that he does not wish to be liberated alone. He does not want to leave all the living entities behind, because many times the living entities, they don't know what is good for themselves. So he does not. He just knows that without taking to Krishna consciousness, no one is going to become happy. So he does not just want his liberation; he wants everyone else's liberation also. And then Prahlad Maharaj says that, "Oh Lord, that you are so merciful towards me, that you want to still give me some benediction. but I feel that I'm purified simply by your touch and your glance, and I will be able to always remember you. But please, whatever my father had done, he had blasphemed you, he considered you the killer of his brother, he committed such grateful, sinful acts against me. But I wish that my father, he can be excused for all these offenses. As soon as Narasimhadev hears this, he actually smiles. All his anger dissipates, and he says that, dear Prahlad, not only has your father become purified because of you, but even your 21 generations of your forefather, and the 24th generation which will be born later, they will all become purified. They will all be liberated in your coming dynasty. So now seeing this, so Lord Brahma goes to Prahlad Maharaj, and he actually is very pleased with Prahlad Maharaj, and he says that because of you, O Prahlad, Lord Narasimhadev's anger has been pacified. So he then prays to Lord Narasimhadev that what a great fortune it is that you have actually killed this demon who was giving troubles to the entire world, and also because of the strength of his benedictions he had received, he was excessively proud and he was transgressing the laws of nature. But because this pure devotee of yours, he meditated upon your transcendental form, he actually went through so much in order to have you appear here and actually deliver all of us from all this imminent danger of death we were all facing. And then the Supreme Lord actually says to Brahma that, oh my dear Brahma, how it is actually dangerous to feed a snake with milk. It is actually also dangerous to give any kind of uh, powerful benedictions to demons. So then he kind of reprimands Brahmaji and says to him, like, tells him that the nature of the demons are actually, they are very ferocious and envious. So he says, he demands and he warns him that do not give any such benedictions anymore to any demon again. So then Narasimhadev, after saying this, giving this warning to Brahmaji, then he disappears from that place. And then Prahlad Maharaj has been worshipped. Then Prahlad Maharaj, he worships and offers prayers to all the demigods, headed by Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. And then, with the assistance of Shukracharya and other Brahmanas, Lord Brahmaji enthrones like Prahlad Maharaj as the king of Daityas and Danavas within the universe. And then what happens is that all the demigods, one by one, they offer their benedictions to Prahlad Maharaj, and all the demigods are satisfied and they return back to their respective abodes. So this is how in a very small brief way, how this entire event happened, describing about how the Lord responds to the devotion of a living entity. It is not because of the Lord being partial, but it is because the devotion of the living entity, of how in the mode of transcendental nature or sattva gun, when the attitude of the recipient is such a way that he receives more mercy of the Lord. The Lord's mercy is flowing to everyone, but in what way the recipient absorbs it, it depends upon the living entity. So this is how it has been described, how the Lord is impartial. At the same time, because of the degree of reciprocation and the degree of uh, loving exchange, it may seem that the Lord is partial because of the affection, but the Lord is trying to give that mercy to everyone, and that has been shown that how the Lord was there for Prahlad Maharaj because of his undivided devotion to the Supreme Lord. So this is the way how Lord Narasimhadev and the devotees, they take pleasure into hearing and remembering and glorifying the Supreme Lord. It's the same way. So happy Lord Narasimhadev Appearance Day and Chaturdashi to everyone. Thank you so much for hearing it. Hare Krishna.